Welcome back to Berlin, Germany, home of the LEC. And like I said yesterday, in my opinion, the best league in the world. The spring split continues today, and the race for first has the potential to get even closer as more teams look to catch up to the top three. We'll see if Misfits can bounce back with a win against a struggling SK Gaming. And today in Ready Check, we'll give you some spicy meta hot takes, and we're going to be joined by two surprise guests, so be sure to stick around for the whole show. Welcome to Yamato and Frosco. What do you think of yesterday, 10-4? Did you have fun?
I wasn't ready for that one, no.
Okay, so we'll save it for the hot takes then. The race for first in the LEC has never been this competitive, and yesterday we saw three other top teams reigning supreme as Fnatic, G2, and Origin all picked up wins. Let's start by talking about Fnatic. We said at the beginning of the show yesterday they were the best team in Europe. Yamato, you and Vedius talked about it. What do you think?
I think coming in from last week, they definitely had some crazy good drafts. I feel like... what is this B-roll about? This is humanoid inting a little bit. I guess that's a whole different one. And there we go. There we go. That's Fabian inting right after he got them kills. We had that beautiful 2v2 on mid lane with the Bippo TP that transitioned into some kills. I think Fnatic showed us that they are not reliant on some draft kingdom, because this draft was definitely worse, and they made it work through very different means.
What I love is how Fnatic are kind of changing how they think about certain matchups, particularly that set matchup. We always know that Bippo is one of our most confident GP players, and like early levels GP, if you actually just watch that top lane, he just sprints at people because he knows how powerful he is. And I think when people initially saw Set versus GP, a lot of people were saying, Set probably favors that. GP probably is just there to survive the lane to scale up. And Bippo was like, nah, I'm actually here to murder you and I'll outscale you.
What do you make about, what do you think about all the different champions he's playing as well? A number of unique picks. He's very bold. You said he's a very confident GP player. I just think he's confident flat out. It doesn't really matter what he's playing. But it seems as though Bippo is finding his groove this season.
Absolutely. He's got the Zac, he has the Singed, he has the Pantheon. And those are just kind of some of the unique French picks out there. And then he also has the signature picks like the Aatrox and the GP. And he is some of the best Aatrox and GP players that we have.
We spent a lot of time talking about the top of the table. Let's talk about the bottom. It feels like there's three teams that are already out of contention for playoffs. Frosk, what do you think about the chances? What do you think about Schalke in particular? Because their losses are a little different.
So here's the thing. Top 6 go to playoffs, and we technically have 4 teams competing for 3 tickets, because you assume it's Fnatic, G2, and Origin, and then with the rise of Mad Lions, Misfits, Rogue, and Excel, one of those teams is kicked out. And I'm glad that you bring up Schalke, because while Schalke probably won't make playoffs, although they're not eliminated yet, they will probably decide who goes to playoffs, because it's so intense that you can no longer afford to overlook a team like Schalke, and they will mess you up and deny you that spot.
Let's turn our attention to Rogue and Mad Lions. Yesterday we tore up our tickets to XL, so let's just assume they're down. What do you make of Rogue and Mad Lions?
I think Rogue in general, they've been playing quite well. Mad Lions to begin with. I think Mad Lions, they had a rough game yesterday, but that W on the board is what matters. Speaking about Rogue, the Echo pick, I liked it. The Tamken Shenna, very broken, they used it. But I'm questioning now with Finn. Played Aatrox, plays Kled, and I know he has the secret pick that he's hiding.
So what's the secret pick?
I think it's time for our segment. They said this is where we come on.
It's our turn now. Let's just, you know.
But hang on. If Drake and Doe are here, are you guys actually going to talk about the team?
Yeah, for sure. Quickie, we got this covered. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
Treat it with some more respect, bro. That's Mr. Shot to you.
Mr. Shot, whatever. Go chill.
Right.
We got this. All right, here we are. Talk about... Nah, absolutely screw that. We're going to talk about what we want to talk about.
Summoners. Salutation summoners. We're here to talk about something significantly more imperative.
Yeah, you see, LEC players are good at 2 things. League of Legends and tactical inting.
Yeah, no, so this might be a little dense for you plebeians down in silver, so try to follow along in the textbook. It's page 156, The Art of the Int.
All right, so let's take a look at the most important factor here, and that is the Inter of the Game leaderboard. No surprise to see our boy Cabo Shard rocking it up there at the top of the table.
Radical, man. Wait, are these all top laners?
Yeah.
All right, well, there's also more instant games. What's happening here, bro?
Look, honestly, dude, LEC is just that good. But it's not just the ints that are impressive, it's the thought behind them that matters. Walk with me, Jer, walk with me.
All right.
Now, what people have to understand is that tactical inting is really about what you get out of it. And, this first one, when we have to look at it first, it's Humanoid. I think no surprises, Humanoid dies seems to be the tagline for the week. But note in this play right here behind me, exactly what he's doing. He sees Sejuani coming. He knows what's at stake, but he also knows that by wasting Sejuani's time in the mid lane, he's buying more time for the rest of his team. Now, on top of that, he's making Febiven share experience points, things that he desperately needs. Icing on the cake, Shadow gets the wave. That's some tactical inting.
That is superfluous, bro.
Definitely superfluous. Now here we see Dan going with the total int. From pick ban to early game to this all-in right here, Dan has become one with the int. Picking Nocturne top, losing lane, all-inning when he's 50 CS down. That's the complete package. A bold move in the face of one of our league's int champions in Bwipo.
Damn, Dan, that's tactical.
Bro, you gotta go to the next thing. You gotta go, you gotta go that way. For your part. All right, but our best int goes to the best mid laner in our league, Caps. This play is called the long con, better known as the big picture int. By dying repeatedly, Caps has baited his opponents into a false sense of security, as well as generally lowered fans' expectations. However, at any moment, he can spring his trap, revealing his true skill on AD champions. Any moment now. Any moment. What's it gonna be a later moment, I think. But really the question is, how does one tactically end?
Drake, thank you so much for asking me, because I want to start by showing you the optimal map state for the tactical int. What you see here is absolutely, I still don't see anything. It's like our names, bro. Like,
that's our names.
That's sort of the whole point here, and that's perfect, because the key is that you ignore any and all information on the map. Teammates, cooldowns, objectives, emotional and or physical
Both
needs,
of them.
and anything else that could hinder your game and your ability to play the game tactically. Just run it down without paying any regard to the consequences of your actions, because with no power comes no responsibility. Thanks, Uncle Ben.
So let's move on. That was a very interesting segment from Drake and Durr.
In summation, if you are a challenger player and get the honor of playing a game with me and Drake, none of these idiots, stop reporting us for intentionally feeding. It might be intentional, but it's also tactical.
Thank you. Right. Yesterday was our first look at patch 10.4. I was asking my analysts earlier what they thought. My analysts, and I'm going to hit them with some spicy hot takes.
Thanks, Trevor. We are some
definitely
spicy hot takes. Dude.
Thanks, Trev. We're looking
Thank you, Drake and Durr. I think that is quite enough of that one.
Wait.
We'd like to continue with Ready Check.
Bro, they just don't know talent when they see it.
Killing the vibe, Quickie.
Right. So, Yamato, what do you think of Drake and Durr?
Honestly, you want me to say it on air? I think better that I don't.
Let's do a hot take then. That was the first one to start us off. The hot takes is simple. I'm going to say something that's very controversial, intentionally over the line, and I'm going to see how my analysts react. First up, Senna and Tahm Kench bot lane is unbeatable.
I think it's unbreakable for the lane phase. I mean, the idea is what I think Shakra has coined it, the fasting Senna, where you build the support itemization that you're only farming the melee creeps, but it's about stacking up your soul count and then picking away while Tahm Kench actually farms. And with the Grey Health, with the Devour, with the heals from Senna, and with the Wave Clear, the idea is it's like the new Sona Taric. You're just unmovable.
I think the key thing, if we take a look back at how people used to beat Sona Taric or Sona Tahm Kench, was to pick a Blitzcrank and set up a lot of ganks, because the Tahm Kench is a melee champion, needs to walk up on the wave and last hit those minions, which exposes himself. But if he gets to base and gets Giant's Belt, it gets too dangerous and he's just too tanky.
So, as a hot take, unbeatable, you say unbreakable?
Some leeway, but really OP.
So you're agreeing with me. It's unbeatable, Yamato said so. Moving on to hot take number 2. Engaged supports like Nautilus, Leona, Rakan have lost their dominance in the bot lane.
See, the thing is you're saying engaged supports, and you're saying that that's the reason why they've lost their dominance, when it's tank supports who happen to have engage can get countered out in the bot lane if you pick things like a Bard and you just start poking people into the eye. And it's the fact that you have things like the Yumis, like the Bards rolling around, which means that if you blind pick Nautilus and Braum, if someone's feeling frisky, they could pick an enchanter down there and mess you up.
I think also they've been hit with a couple of nerfs over and over, and I think in general, when we see picks like the Yumi, picks like the Taric, Senna Tahm Kench coming back in the picture, they kind of phase out more and more. But I have to point out that the Rakan still, to me, is really, really broken because of the Zyrakan synergy, and Rakan has the option of playing both ways. He can kite, he can go forward, he's just too flexible.
So not quite a hot take. That one is actually kind of agreed with, so thank you. Finally, Pantheon is the #1 flex pick in the meta right now.
That's actually just wrong.
Yeah, there's Ornn. There's Ornn, but we can say that Ornn just doesn't belong in the games, right? He should be perma-banned, which he was, luckily. But outside of Ornn, I guess I could agree, yeah.
So second Frosk?
What? No, you're just factually wrong.
Tell me why.
Because I would think of a million other picks that I would grab before I went for the Pantheon. And I also think that our teams aren't comfortable flexing him in multiple positions. I think that there are certain players that are comfortable playing him top lane versus playing him mid lane. And it's very rare, maybe like 2 teams in our league that would actually feel comfortable playing him everywhere, including that bot lane position.
I think the key thing that what makes Pantheon so tricky to deal with is usually when Pantheon gets picked, you want to ban junglers in the second wave. But when the jungle bans start to come, like Taliyah, Elise, you just put Pantheon himself in the jungle. And all of a sudden you have an option to pick, for example, AP in the mid lane. So just that flexibility alone, especially if Pantheon kind of leaks into the red side, it becomes very, very dangerous.
I was considering putting Set in there instead, because I've heard he's being support, he's top, he's mid. Where does he fit into the
You're drinking that
schedule?
Flexius Kool-Aid, huh?
I had to. You know, it was too awesome. Son of a gun. Anyways, look, that does it for the hot takes. If you have any, hit us up at LEC. And we're going to move on to some spicy picks. Hopefully we'll see them tonight in our match of the week. Rogue are looking to prove that they belong in the top discussion in our Alienware match of the week.
At this point in the league, the top is no longer clear. You can make an argument for any of these teams. And Rogue and Origin don't just have something to prove to themselves, they have something to prove on the standings.
Honestly, I just really want to win a split. I've always had the belief that I will be the best at some point, but I've never actually won a split. So it's just been a matter of trying to keep this belief within me, despite disappointing results.
Alfari has come into his own. He is one of these diamonds in the rough that has been polished up into that final jewel. This guy is smashing records in the top lane. He is a front runner for MVP of the split, and if he keeps at this pace, he will be MVP. We haven't seen numbers like this since 2017.
All right, Alfari flashed away from the supreme display of talent. Still got damage done. Nemesis is being eaten away by the cannon barrage. He stays alive long enough. Alfari in the 1v2.
Finn can look for the dive. He's gonna dunk the Soraka back down. Whoa, boom, combo!
It's that type of fire that really thrives in these young squads. Finn, I think, fits in that category of constantly make crazy plays so that one day those are just the standard ones.
I don't think anyone in our team feels like we've finished our journey.
I haven't won LCS or LEC title, and I really want to win one.
So we're just gonna keep going until we get it.
I want to be the Hansama that shines.
That's going to be caught up from the flank drag. The showstopper is inside the 50 field, still available. It's secured by Misfits. Now it's a 2-for-1. Hansama is ripping through Misfits, and Hansama closes out.
Finn is in the back line. Inak's almost down. That's 1, that's 2. Larson and Finn, it's just the Rogue show here. Finn gets another connection onto Lorwak's. Can't quite find the third, but he flashes forward. It's a double. It's Finn. He's 20 years old, Venius.
You can throw a stone at any point in this map, and you can hit a matchup that's worth talking about.
Xerxes gone back for those already. Flash away with the follow. Flash. Nuka's going to jump in. Will it be enough? Ticking, 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 and he's gone! Oh, Femi. Pumps the stopwatch. Forbidden jumping forward. Larson jumping back. Larson gets him! Here he is.
Upset with a QSS flash.
My motivations are the same as when I was a rookie. I still want to prove that I'm the best, and I want to show it every time I play.
The time for second chances is very quickly evaporating. The league is much more stacked, and it's a much closer race than anyone anticipated. There are no more mistakes.
So, Frosk said it. Throw a rock and you'll hit a matchup worth talking about. We're not going to throw rocks, but we are going to talk about the matchups from top to bottom lane in our match of the week. And I have to start with what is the most exciting matchup for me in the top lane. Finn versus Alfari. I want to talk about the champion pools. I want to talk about the Kled. What's your take on the matchup?
I think it's also probably the most volatile matchup. The fact of the matter is when you look back at Origin, we had the numbers for Alfari right there. He's kind of their primary pressure point, not just in where a lot of their resources are going, ganking him, allowing him to win his lane, but also his scaling potential. He plays things like that Camille that you know can be that late game monster, whereas Finn really hasn't shown the same versatility in his champion pool.
I have a big issue with the fact that he doesn't play the meta champions. We think of Gangplank, we think of Seth as he gets solo killed on the screen. He mentioned himself that he didn't have that much knowledge in the matchup. But ever since he's been relying on that Aatrox, relying on that Kled, and blind picking Kled is kind of oof right now.
Yeah, and just a correction, that's actually Alphari's champion pool and not Finn's. If you look at Finn's champion pool, it's virtually the Aatrox, and then there you go. It's the Aatrox, it's the Kled, and it's the
Out of 30 professional games that Finn has played, 9 of them have featured a Kled in some way, shape, or form. 6 bans, 2 wins, 1 loss. I mean, that is an insane amount for who was a Kled one-trick when he came into the match. I want to see what he does today. Let's move on to jungle. Xerxes versus Inspired. I think they're stylistically different. Frosk, explain why.
I think the eye test is that you would feel watching those games that Inspired seems to gank a lot more than Xerxes, but I think it also goes back to champion pool and kind of what the responsibilities are to the team. If you look at Xerxes' champion pool, I think G2 kind of laid out the blueprint pretty early on that if he took the Gragas away from him, he didn't have the Lee Sin. He would have to reach for things like the Rek'Sai. I think he showed the Lee Sin maybe once or twice so far, and it just doesn't have the same impact as guys like Shadow running around on this champion. But the Gragas, the Karthus, that sits right in his pocket, whereas Inspired actually has the flip side of the champion pool. He has more of the 80 junglers. It's the big Olaf player. He'll play the Lee Sins, the Jarvans, but he doesn't really have the Elise, or he hasn't shown a lot of things like that with the Gragas. So I think it's really interesting that they're kind of two sides of the same coin, and they can really get pinched into draft, and that makes them try to prioritize their champions earlier on.
And it's a new patch as well, 10-4. We've only seen 1 day of games. Let's move on to the mid lane. Nukeduck versus Larson. What's your take on the matchup?
Honestly, like looking at all of the matches that we talked about, I think this is quite a boring one. It's not a game-defining one because these players are always...
Nukeduck boring. Tell
honestly,
me why.
Nukeduck boring. I love the man, you know, we work together and such, but quite boring. You know, a lot of Ornn, a lot of Nautilus.
He probably agrees. He's like, I don't want to play. I'm done.
For sure, probably agrees. But the 2 players we have on the screen here, both of them, their performance is always reliant on what's going on around them. And that's the role they're playing for the team, understandable. This is where the draft has turned them into. And I think you have those occasional performances. We saw the Kiana first week from, of course, Larson, where he 1v9, the solo killed Forbidden over and over. We've seen the Zed from Nukeduck, so we have to pay attention to what kind of champions they pick, because it might mute everything that I've just said.
Yeah, it's always that reminder that we know that if you give them assassins, they can pop off, but their responsibility right now are the Azirs, the Nautiluses, the Ornns, the boring champions, probably a Zoe in there. I do want to highlight, though, kind of the difference in the relationship with their junglers.
Okay.
It feels that Larson makes a lot more space for Inspire to go on the aggressive, whereas I don't actually see Xerxes spend that much time with Nukeduck. Usually Xerxes is more about neutralizing, controlling the game, going for counter ganks, rather than just sitting and hard camping a lane.
I'm going to be very interested to see how the draft pans out, because now we've got 2 of these matchups that both of you have said it can go polar opposites depending on what they get their hands on. So it's going to be interesting. Let's turn our attention to the bot lane. I want to look at both duos together. And just to start it off, Upset's the only one of these 4 that hasn't been to Worlds. And he's arguably the best player out of the 4.
It's kind of crazy because currently, in terms of form, mechanical form, I definitely think Upset stands above. And if you look at the AD carry, that's what they get judged by. Usually, you know, their mechanical prowess. But when I compare the supports, that's where it kind of gets iffy, because I think Vander is far the smarter player. And I think when you look at the bot lanes together, I think, sure, Upset mechanical, Rogue might be on the smarter end.
I also think that Origin are a bit more reliant. It's interesting, because Upset has shown that he'll play the mages and he'll play the traditional ADCs, which I think in the past a lot of people would have questions about. But the responsibility that Origin seem to be playing in a lot of their compositions is that Upset is going back to that traditional ADC role, and that kind of stagnates them in terms of their versatility compared to G2 and Fnatic, who can throw a lot more curveballs. And so I'm curious, like, is it Upset and Destiny that are hamstringing Origin here, or is it Origin that is forcing Upset to just go back to the simplistic side? Like, you have Upset, just play front to back, you'll win anyway.
I get what you mean, especially with a team that does tend to play later games, tend to get to those 3-4 item stages. I want to ask a question, though.
Meta.
If, theoretically, Vander is the greatest support, and on the other side, Upset is the greater AD, who has more influence in the duo, the support or the bot laner?
It all depends. Yeah.
Oh,
is Vander playing Yumi? Like, that's the question mark, right?
Okay,
it's all about
so
the champs.
We've talked about all of the lanes. Match of the week is going to be game 4 today. Tell me who has the advantage and who you're expecting to win.
You want to go first?
I can go first. Well, I think the great thing about OG is I think Alphari, Upset individually have been amazing, astonishing. And I think they can easily make a case for being, like, at the end of the split, you know, top team or whatever, right? But the thing is, they've been forced to do so because they've dragged OG over the finish line when their mid lane has looked, mid game has looked sloppy, their end game has looked sloppy. And that's kind of, is it a strength, is it a weakness? I don't know. So I think this is in the hands of Rogue. If they continue with a similar performance like yesterday, I think they come together better as a team.
Yeah, I think it's, I like this idea of like agency of Rogue, of who's going to hit first, and you do kind of wait on Rogue's side just because Origin tend to be a little bit slower in the early game. I think the game will look out this way. If Inspired is just hyper explosive in the early game, he gets a snowball going, you have Rogue initially rotating around the map first, they can start to speed up the tempo, but if the game gets stalled out, then you're like, oh yeah, this is probably Origin because Alpharia and Upset are better carries.
Yesterday after Rogue's win, Finn was interviewed and he said, this is how we play in scrims, this is how we want to play. It was a very impressive performance, and if they get the advantage today, maybe they can take it down Origin. That game is coming up later tonight, but there's more to look forward to before that as XL looks to gain some ground on Mad Lions in the race for playoffs. We're also going to get a player's perspective in Game 5 as G2 versus Finality. We'll have Finn joining us for picks and bans, and then the early game. Why are we laughing here?
Because he said finality.
Oh my word, I'm not feeling well. Nevertheless, look, where's the potential for an upset? I asked the question yesterday, we didn't get it.
Well, we have some tough matchups today, honestly. Like, I think, if anything, at this point, maybe XL could cause an upset because, honestly, I see them as an underdog in every matchup.
And also remember, I think XL beat Mad Lions last time at the first round robin. This could be the matchup that determines head-to-heads. That could define playoffs. The rookies are taking the LEC by storm this year, and for Misfits, the sky is the limit for these young players. One of them has stepped up as a leader on the Rift, and he has a sneak peek of how he guides the team in the early game.
Rock I'm missing, maybe we the...
I'm coming towards bot right now. Remember, defensive bishop bot side. We are not playing for this Drake at all, okay? We have really good scale. Coming there, he has no flash though. I mean, he has no Rise, no TP, no ulti. We can dive him. You tank, okay?
Yeah.
Go.
After flash.
Is that?
Nice one.
Can you get out? Yeah, I'm out.
Hey, we're making a play on this Rise, by the way.
No flash on GP.
We're making a play on this Rise, okay? There's no plans, no flash.
Blue side, maybe.
Basing hit TPs.
I think they are doing Drake.
It's really fine. Maybe they invader blue?
Yeah, maybe.
Hey, wait. If he shows, I ult him, okay?
MM Power stay here. MM Power stay here. I hover mid.
You can
yes,
shuffle to me, okay?
I have a slow push. I'm moving. Is he dead? Nice.
Yeah, he's
Try
dead.
to give me.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Our blue is up. I have a slow push here. Our blue is up.
Yeah. I'm looking to swap, okay? Now for Herald, guys.
Hello everyone, I'm Medic, joined by Amazing. I want to talk a little bit about Razork. He's had a really good start to the split, rookie of the split material in a lot of people's eyes. What is it that makes him such a good jungler?
I think it's his mechanical ability and matchup knowledge. I think he has 2-3 champions where he just demolishes everyone, and we've seen it in solo queue too, where he's on such a high level that even other players such as Perks fear him at this point. So it's something that makes him stand out, but also his willingness to learn. I think his ability to understand the early game, which is something a lot of junglers actually have struggled with at the professional scene when they come from channel scene to like the LEC. They kind of struggle with the pace, with the tempo, with how lanes operate, and I think he has really adapted well.
And how much of that learning is actually week to week? How much do you think he's improving week to week?
It depends on how hard I push him, I guess. But he's been improving in a way where he starts to ask the right questions. And I think that's when I know that he's really understanding what we're going for. And every single week he adds to that repertoire of questions that he needs to ask in order to become better. So that's how I measure his improvement.
All right, excellent. Let's talk a little bit about his combination with Forbidden in the mid lane. Forbidden, a lot of people's front runner for MVP at the moment, or at least at week 5. How do you feel they work together, and why is that synergy so strong for Misfits?
I think they add to one another. You wouldn't think that, but Fabi, despite his veteran age at this point, I guess, is someone that is still young at heart. So the way that he talks to Razork is basically as if they just came from the challenge scene together, so they kind of synergize in that. But also Fabi then understands, hey, there's certain things I need from you, and he's really able to tell them to Razork, and vice versa. So they have a really good open conversation, and they basically treat one another with respect, which is something that not necessarily every veteran does to a rookie jungler.
Okay, that sounds actually really synergistic and cohesive as a team, and you don't always hear that. Let's talk a little bit about how Razork fits into the Misfits whole then, because you have B-Boy and Danik in the bottom lane, 2 players who haven't really played at this sort of level before. You've got Dan in the top lane who's only been here for a split, and Razork, although he's new blood and is a rookie, has felt like a guiding force a lot of the time for the team.
Yeah, it's something we've actively worked upon, because in the beginning when he came in, he was kind of a bit raw in the way that he just played up on feel, like and up on instinct. And I think now he has adapted to the point where he's actually able to read lanes and ask them, hey, what do you guys need? What do you guys need from me? And he's able to act upon it. So yeah, he's really fitting in well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Amazing, for talking to us. Back to you guys.
Razork is one of the front runners for Rookie of the Split, and together with Febiven, he completes one of the most feared mid-jungle duos in the LEC. I want to take a moment just talk about Razork. Yesterday, VODs was talking very highly about how he plays and what he likes about him. It's really great to hear the comms and how he's directing the game.
I think it's so unique that we have in this year so many rookies in positions that usually come with leadership. Jungle coming in at a rookie position. I think he's blessed to work with Amazing. That's fantastic. A lot of veteranship there, a lot of experience. Usually rookies come out, oh, they're playing mid lane, AD carry, they're popping off mechanically because that's what the role allows you to. But Razork now on the jungle role is taking charge, and I think that's super impressive in your first split.
It's also in tandem with the fact that there's so many jungle supports. So I agree with you that normally you're used to seeing rookies in just kind of like the carry position of like the mid laner or the ADC especially. But when it is these two positions where you have a lot of young blood that are so critical to controlling the map or kind of leading the steps in the early game, gives you a really different dynamic that I think we've had in previous iterations of splits.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's also important to call out that on this roster, the most experienced player in Febiven, he's finding his old form. You know, he's got back to winning ways. I'm not quite sure I'm ready to say it's like 2015 Febiven yet.
I mean, I wasn't there for that, but I will say that what I'm seeing from Febiven right now is hella impressive. Like the pixel perfect Azir sex that he's been pulling off, and when he has Razork in his back pocket, the synergy between them. If you go back and watch that Azir Sejuani game, like as, I think it was Humanoid, as the opponent is in the air, from the Azir sec, the Sejuani ult comes out and hits them before they hit the ground. And it's very rare that you see a team that hasn't been playing together that long, especially in this combination, have that level of synergy. And I think that's kind of the ignite the flame for the success that Misfits have found. Like, yeah, there's other players and other things happening around it, but the synergy and the individual performance between this mid-jungle duo is hot right now.
I completely agree. Unfortunately, it didn't work yesterday. I'm expecting them to bounce back. Yesterday, Misfits just did not show up against Fnatic. Early game decision-making didn't go their way. Let's put it into context of today's matchup. SK, significantly weaker opponent than Fnatic from yesterday. So Misfits are favored, but this comes with additional pressure. They have to win if they want to stay in contention for the top.
It's so strange because I'm trying to think of SK and what is the shining light here. I've seen some fine performances from Crown Shop, but I feel like it's so uninspiring across the board. I think it's so difficult to talk about SK because I think, you know, when I think of Vitality, at least I can see like an end game there. They're improving slightly, but SK just falls flat for me, honestly.
Yeah, I think a really big issue, and we've talked about this a couple times on cast, is that when I look at Trick's jungle style, I think it works if you are not on a team where your individual laners are losing. Like, there's so many times when Trick will be responding to the wave state, like he's covering when lanes are overextended, or he's there when the possibility is that his laners are going to get ganked. But in his pathing, which is pretty efficient actually in terms of farming, his laners are losing flashes, they're losing massive trades, they're walking back into lane and not paying attention and getting killed, and then there's just not much that you can do, and Trick doesn't have the style to like pull his laners out of that. I think he's a great supportive-esque jungler, that if his laners are winning, he can probably make them win harder. But right now, SK Gaming need to go back to reaching for those comfort picks, putting Sakurai on the cannon, grabbing him his Vladimir, because I think they're trying to figure out...
for Genax to have pop-off moments, because he has stepped up in the last few weeks.
Just survived the lane.
Look, for SK Gaming, it feels like their chances at playoffs is done, but it is not over mathematically, and they can play spoiler. If they pick up wins against like the likes of Misfits, they can determine who advances and in what seed. The stage is set. We're ready for more action in the LEC. Let's hit the Rift.